South African voters have been urged to be on the lookout for misinformation and disinformation ahead of the elections. The 2024 polls are being touted as the most important since the dawn of democracy. Joining us for this discussion is Nomshado Lubisi-Nkosinkulu, who is the Communications Manager at Media Monitoring Africa. Very good afternoon to you. Thank you for your time. Misinformation and disinformation. How do we distinguish between the pair?
So disinformation is basically deliberate content and or narratives that is created to cause harm, whereas misinformation is still the false narrative or the content that was created, but it does not have the intention or the deliberate nature that the disinformer had. And usually this obviously happens with whether somebody shares the link that is misinforming basically the next person, or engages with the content, and that's how actually disinformation thrives.
Now, I know that you've been very vocal on this matter. Of course, as we look towards the elections, touted as being the most important since the dawn of democracy, misinformation and disinformation are not a likelihood, but a certainty in the run-up to the general elections, and they posed a clear threat to democracy. In what way?
So, I mean, we've seen how it has basically impacted elections globally, but particularly in South Africa. I mean, we've been basically monitoring, being the platform that citizens can submit to since 2019's elections. And we start to see the trend of how even technology is coming to play in terms of amplifying the narratives. And we see this through things such as deepfakes, where it's somebody's audio and image being used to basically create a new form of media saying something completely different. We see it being, manipulated images, or even images and videos from different countries from early 2000s being used as a current situation right now, particularly when we're in a heightened type of environment with unrests, etc. And I think currently right now, with the different changes in the Electoral Act, and also, the addition of independent candidates and all this new information, is where they tend to kind of linger in terms of creating content with a bit of truth, but obviously with the main chunk of it being the false narratives that they want to drive. So I think pre-elections, we're going to start seeing a few of those coming up. I think even the trend of how this really trickles to offline. So it doesn't even mean that it's something that's thriving on the online space. It's also something that people are engaging when you're talking in terms of offline, spaces.
So where does that put the role of artificial intelligence, which has become so sophisticated?
So, I mean, it can amplify, but it can also assist in the sense of detecting and us being able to, use technology. I mean, one of the key platforms which we obviously partnered with the IC on this is Real 411, which is a civic tech tool, a platform where citizens can be empowered to be able to submit digital offense content, particularly mis and disinformation during elections. However, as technology is growing, or as AI is also advancing and becoming more sophisticated, so is disinformation and the narratives around there becoming very extremely difficult sometimes, or in some instances, to actually start differentiating, is this credible information or not. And I think this honestly emphasizes the important role that media plays during the electoral period, but most importantly when it comes to information dissemination.
As analysts predict that the upcoming elections will be one of the most crucial and potentially aggressive election periods in our young democracy, how do we then begin to understand the notion of democracy being under threat and South Africa having to deal with these unprecedented threats?
I think we need to start interacting with information in a different light, in a different way. So easily do we take things at face value, particularly, in platforms such as WhatsApp, where it's a direct messaging platform and it's your friends, it's your family. And during this period, you'll get a lot of voice notes, you'll get a lot of chain messages being passed on. And it's high time where we equip citizens or voters themselves to be able to actually start detecting, or perhaps even being empowered to know what to do once they detect, such narratives going around. it easily is the biggest threat when we're talking about undermining human rights, undermining democracy, and easily eroding trust in institutions as well. I mean, we've seen how, attacks against journalists, attacks against institutions such as IEC could easily, hinder the electoral process, but also the integrity of elections, whereby at the end of the day, what we are trying to do is to ensure that, number one, we're empowering voters, but number two, we're ensuring that the space and the information that we're interacting with is credible information.